You were caught on a hot mic after your State of the Union address talking to Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Senator Michael Bennet, saying, quote, "I told him, Bibi, and don't repeat this, but you and I are going to have a come to Jesus meeting." What do you mean by that?
What I meant was, it's an expression used in the southern part of my state, meaning a serious meeting. And it was...
it's a serious meeting. It's, famous amongst the Delawarean dialect. Come to Jesus meeting. We're going to have a come to Jesus meeting. I really wanted, that reporter, and I'll give him credit for asking these tough questions, wanted to go, so what were you asking a Jewish prime minister about having to come to, is this, if this was Trump, they would be going, he's threatening to baptize Bibi. That's what they would be doing. I promise that's what they would be doing. All right, welcome back to the program. Dana Loesch with you. Bottom of this third hour, our very good friend Stephen Yates, who is the senior fellow at the America First Policy Institute and chair of the China Policy Initiative as well. He joins us, and I've immediately got to get your reaction to this, my good friend. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Dana. Always serving up the best words from our very eloquent president. Some of the words apparently he means, and some of the words he apparently doesn't mean.
Because you've never heard this saying before. Being from Idaho and living in Florida, this is you're not from Southern Delaware, so you've never heard this.
Yeah, I don't know. Last I checked, the name Jesus was mentioned like 2,000 plus years ago and has rattled around every quarter of this planet ever since. And I'm one of those people that celebrates that. I don't know what he thought he was trying to say, but apparently in Southern Delaware or wherever he says he's from or thinks he was from, they don't use the words legal and illegal the same way the rest of us do.
True.
And when we're going to talk to, say, the Muslim world or the only Jewish state on the planet, we don't actually joke about having a come to Jesus meeting. And I don't know, this just strikes me as just exhibit number 1,000 or 1 million of does anyone really love this man and tell him, you think you're funny, but you're not. You got to lay off the jokes when you're president of the United States.
Especially when they don't make sense because you're like barely sentient. I mean, it's difficult. Talking with our friends,
not working.
Our friend Stephen Yates, you can find him on X at YatesComs. So we're funding, and I got a few things I want to cover with you, but we're funding this aid going to Hamas in Gaza because they still run Gaza. Hamas is demanding that a bunch of stuff, including the release of what they say displaced Palestinians, whatever that means, a whole bunch. They've not offered to release any hostages or do anything else. But whenever Hamas refuses to negotiate, the pressure is always turned up, but not on Hamas. It's turned up on Israel. That's what the Biden administration does. I don't know what they think they're going to accomplish by this. Your thoughts on the way they're handling this?
Well, this has been maddening and insulting from the get-go. I mean, there were people who, right after this absolute horrific travesty occurred, were trying to do kind of whataboutism or moral equivalence on both sides. There just is nothing like what Hamas and others did to just murder, rape, and terrorize the Israeli people at that terrible, terrible day. And so there's really been only down from there, people sinking into this. I personally think that day, as it should have before, killed any idea of having a two-state solution. You can't have some kind of a political settlement without security, and you can't have security when you have hostages still being held. And so This isn't picking a president or a party. It's just basic stuff. And I don't know why it's hard for this administration. It shouldn't be hard for the United States of America across the board. We have our citizens still held hostage there. It's not a tough choice. But somehow people twist themselves into pretzels. And I have no idea why the president feels he has the authority to go open up a pier to give aid to a group that is governed by those who perpetuated this attack, but somehow doesn't have the authority to secure our border.
Yeah, you mentioned two very important things where they still have hostages, American hostages. We're sending them aid. Hamas still runs stuff. They took the last bunch of aid that was sent over, but this port that we are now, and CENTCOM was tweeting out or posting on X pictures of this all the preparations they have to create this temporary, I guess, dock outside of Gaza, completely unprotected if Hamas chooses to attack, because we are essentially supplying the enemy of an ally. Are we also expecting the ally to protect us as we supply the enemy? Because I think that the IDF kind of has their hands full.
Well, we also tried to lecture that ally that it has to agree to some kind of a ceasefire because of a religious tenet that obviously isn't even honored by the people who perpetuated this attack. I don't think they can justify in their theology what they did. And so this is just buying into what I consider to be an evil, false narrative. And American foreign policy can't afford to be governed by that. We make plenty of mistakes because we're well-intentioned Americans and sometimes not well-intentioned Americans. We can't afford to indulge in this kind of stuff, though. Yeah. This is tiptoeing into a war, alienating and hurting an ally in an already unsettled region, with Iran just sitting there saying, thank you very much. Yeah. It's maddening.
And why are we, and you know, with your knowledge about this area, maybe you can shed some light on this. Why are we putting this temporary dock port, whatever it is, outside of Gaza? Why don't we just scooch it down south, scooch it down right underneath, maybe towards Egypt, and then go on land there and then go through the Rafah crossing? Why don't we do that?
Yeah, apparently we have done almost nothing to use leverage, pressure, or anything else to have Egypt or other neighbors have to participate in this, which is, I think, a violation of one of the better tenets of recent past foreign policy, which was that neighbors and partners and allies closest to the problem have to be full partners and have to carry their own weight. Otherwise, the United States is not going to overspend and overextend itself into another conflict. That, I think, is something that is a correct way to think about what's happening around the world, and it is being deliberately violated with these actions. But Egypt has not been put in a position of pressure to be a part of a peace process. There was a time, even under Jimmy Carter, who I didn't have the highest regard for in terms of intellect and policy, even he worked with Egypt to try to address peace in that troubled region. Now we're just going straight to the terrorists.
After he created the problem in the region. At least, he was able to get Egypt to work with him a little bit. Talking with our good friend Stephen Yates. I know that they were a part of, I think it was Egypt, Jordan, and I thought there was another Arab nation, in dropping aid into Gaza with parachutes. Apparently one of them didn't open and hurt 11 people, killed 2. But seems like this is an Arab League issue. I would just think if you want people there to get aid that Hamas is going to take anyway and not distribute, then you all handle it. Arab League handles it. If you're not going to take the refugees, then you can handle the aid.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, anybody that is holding our hostages, they don't get aid.
Yeah.
And does anyone really believe they know where this aid is going? That there's going to be accountability?
It's only civilians. Hamas, the poor civilians that elected Hamas, and then we're going to elect them again.
It's magically we'll know exactly where it will go, and if it goes to unclean hands, it will self-immolate.
Right.
And so there's a problem of just the reality of the terrorists that did this haven't been extinguished, haven't been controlled. The people that have put them in a position of influence, that have given them safe harbor, they're the ones that have to exterminate this problem, get it out of their borders. If they do that, then America has always been generous under humanitarian circumstances, but we should definitely have their neighbors who have been fellow travelers in this cause that they've argued for. They should be at the front line in terms of money and other kinds of meaningful assistance. But as long as there's hostages being held, and as long as you're trying to buy the narrative that it's because Israel has fought back that there's a humanitarian problem, then you've already ceded this battle space, because this happened because of Iran and their proxy terrorists and a lot of establishment thinking that empowered the terrorists to have a governing role in this society. That's what caused this. And so if you're just giving aid and you're taking the assumption that, oh, this has only happened because Israel has fought back and is fighting back too hard, that's a lie, and I just don't think we should be participating, much less funding a lie.
That's, I think, a fantastic point. Our friend Stephen Yates at Yates Comms I wanted to ask you really quickly, too, kind of shifting focus maybe to the other part of the world, the AI arms race. That's just a terrifying phrase that I don't like reading or even speaking aloud, like it'll just manifest it into existence, what's already in existence. Yahoo had this story about the fight over control of AI. Now you have the United States and China competing with everything from designing the hardware and software, obviously programming it. We were just talking, we talked recently on the program about the CRT DEI woke already baked into a lot of the programming for AI, which results in the Google image stuff that we've seen. But while the U.S. is kind of leading at the moment, developing these language models, China's not far behind. What does this mean? I feel like this is like the latest Mission Impossible movie, where it really is like AI and war games, but now it's like China and the United States. None of this forecasts anything good.
Well, number one, we will have no chance unless we get out of our own way. We have done so much to put ourselves in a bad position. First and foremost, making our supply chains overly dependent on the power that has said out loud for a long time that it seeks to harm and overcome us. And then the other thing that we're doing is our institutions that should put us in a place to compete and overcome any of these challenges, and we still have the ability to do so, whether it's the military, the universities, the tech world. They have been destroying our ability to allow meritocracy, to allow the best of the come to the top, to create the world's greatest solutions at greatest speed in order to be able to do this. I think we'll get kind of slapped in the face or punched in the jaw, whatever the right analogy is, and maybe people will come to their senses. I just thank heaven there's been some disclosure on the AI front lately so that people know it's not a joke. Trillions of dollars have been poured into this in the United States, making us dumber, making us less competitive. And if we don't stop that, of course, the Chinese, who have no ethics on this under the Communist Party, will race ahead of us. We have to stop funding them,
TikTok.
and we have to get ourselves straightened out.
Yeah, like with the TikTok stuff. We actually have Brendan Carr on tomorrow to talk. But I mean,
He's excellent.
They're going after shareholders. If a shareholder makes a disparaging statement, excuse me, about TikTok, their entire holdings can be seized by the Chinese government.
What an amazing case study of making the claim that the Select Committee on Strategic Competition with the Chinese Communist Party made. When you look at how TikTok and its lobbyists have responded, this is straight out of the textbook of a foreign-influenced political operation. And so this is exactly what people were saying the threat of TikTok was. And in response, they seem to be daring the Congress to go ahead and ban them when the Congress isn't even proposing to ban them. They're just saying you have to break with the CCP. You got to fall out of love with a genocidal regime that wants to hurt you and happens to also poison our children. So, I mean, this shouldn't be a hard case to make. I am really disappointed in a number of political leaders that can't see the difference between divestiture from an evil, aggressive foreign regime and a First Amendment that doesn't protect said evil foreign regimes. Yeah. And we got to get that simple stuff right, too, if we're going to overcome this technical and media and social media challenge.
Gosh, this is just, our world's in a mess. Stephen Yates, always grateful for you being involved in all this. At YatesComms on X. And you can follow America First Policy Institute at A1, number one policy. Thank you so much, my friend. Always good to see you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dana. Take care.
Of course.